Hello, welcome to the video all about how to get other adults to look after your child and make a seamless transition from the intense time of learning all those beautiful new skills that you've been teaching your child to then becoming more independent and automated with that process. Okay, so what I want to do first of all is I just want to share my screen and show you, go back to one of the slides that we talked about in one of the earlier videos, where we were talking about the different stages of toilet training. So you can see here, you may remember this from the previous video where we talked about the preparation phase, the intensive phase, and in this part here, we're working on this practice phase. Okay, so in the practice phase, what we're going to find is that the kids have learned a whole lot in the intensive phase. Now, for most kids, that lasts for about 4 to 5 days, and then they're ready to get into the phase where they're actually practicing what they're doing. Now, what that means for you is that they're still quite dependent on other adults to help them, right? So whether it's you, your partner, your mother-in-law, your mother, the child's grandparents, their early childhood educators, in whatever form that looks like, you are going to need to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And some people will say to me, well, what do I do if I'm separated from my partner and they look after my child? Or what do I do with my daycare teachers? How do I help my au pair or my nanny to get on board with what we're doing? So this video is one that is going to be super useful. The first thing that you want to think is to think, who are the significant people that are going to be toileting your child? Now, generally what happens is when a child goes into an environment which may be familiar to them, but might be a little more stimulating than the home environment, for example, an early childhood centre, they often will hang back a little bit and not want to use the toilets or not want to ask adults for help. And that's something that they have to learn, because at the moment, your child's probably not independent with pulling up and pushing down their pants consistently or initiating toilet visits. And that's all normal. That's because they're learning what they need to do. So ideally, you would have talked to your early childhood teacher or the person looking after your child before you had started toilet training to get on the same page. And if you haven't done that yet, that's totally fine. Make an appointment with them, have a chat with them so that everybody is singing from the same hymn book. So it's a good idea to actually go in with some questions and say, what kinds of things have you found have worked for children in the past? What do you do in terms of a really great system for supporting the kids in the centre that you're working at? And, how can we at home start to prepare my child to make a smooth transition back into the centre? So some examples might be that the early childhood teachers say, we're more than happy for your child to arrive, be in underwear, but if they have about 3 accidents, then we'll be putting them back into nappies, which is obviously can be really, really confusing. So what we want to do is make sure that the kids have A, a consistent person that's toileting them, and B, a consistent message of, I trust you. Okay, because immediately what happens is if your child has lots of accidents and they end up going back into nappies, all the good work during the intensive phase goes out the window because they're then back in their comfort zone. They're getting mixed messages because at home you're saying, keep the nappies on only for sleep time, but at daycare or kindy, they're saying, oh no, we're going to put you back in nappies. And so basically their child's getting these inconsistent messages. So you really want to have it so that your child is getting that consistent message of, I trust you, keep doing the great things that you've learned to do at home when we're out or when other adults are looking after you. So one example is that you might want to put them into absorbent undies. Absorbent undies are great because they've got the bamboo liner in them. So you can see with these ones here that because you've got the little hammock thing that's got absorbency there, if your child has a wee accident, then they are going to feel wet close to their skin, but they're not going to be the child at daycare that has this trail of wees following along behind them as they're running around the daycare, or that puddle in the sandpit because they've forgotten to go. The wee pants are going to give them that feeling of wet close to their skin and give them some time to find an adult to help take them to the toilet. Now, if that adult is actually the same person who toilets them throughout the day, then they are more likely to make progress. Because a lot of children don't want, 5 different people taking them to the toilet in a day and wiping their bottom and things like that. They don't feel comfortable with that. But there might be a teacher or maybe 2 teachers within their environment that they really, really trust and that they have a strong bond with. And those ones are the ones that should be toileting your child. So when you turn up to daycare with your child wearing their wee pants, or maybe they're in undies that are just plain cotton, you want to talk to that adult and just let them know what's been working really, really well for you in terms of supporting your child through the process. Okay, let them know how often you're needing to take the child to the toilet and what kind of consequences there are going to be. So here I've got a little shark stamp that you may be able to see. When my little boy was little, my second son, he really, really loved sharks. And so I got this little shark stamp. And what would happen is if the teacher found before they took him to the toilet that his underwear was clean and dry, then they were able to put a stamp on his hand. And if you've got a different goal that you're working on that isn't clean and dry, whatever the currency is that you've been using at home or the goal, then try and transfer that into the early childhood environment. So with a stamp, it's pretty easy to say, can you please give my child a stamp for doing this particular goal? And then when I pick them up, I'm going to count how many stamps there are on their hand, make a really big deal about it. And if they've got this many stamps, whatever the magic number is, it might be 3 stamps, then I'm going to take them home and they can have some kind of celebration at home. And that's where you might use something from the treasure box, or they might have a little bit of screen time if you're currently using screen time, or maybe on the way home you're going to take them to the park, or do something that is their currency, just to reinforce. And basically you're saying to them, I want you to do the same great behaviour that you do at daycare or kindy, and I also want you to do it at home, and I want it to be both, right? I don't just care what happens at home and then you're thrown to the wind when you go to daycare. Actually, I really care, and I'm going to be checking that you've been really clever to keep doing the lovely things that you normally do. Now remember, most kids, when they go back into an early childhood environment, are not going to feel confident to go up to a teacher and say, can you please take me to the toilet? So for a lot of them, they'll get very engrossed in play, and they actually don't want to leave the play area. Because if they leave the play area, someone might bust their hut that they've just spent time making, or wreck their construction, or do something with their painting, right? So they would rather keep playing in the play area, for most of them, than actually initiate a toilet visit. So if your child is actually doing the second gear method, where they go to the toilet on the way to doing an activity during a transition, then that kind of method is going to work very well in an early childhood environment, where they go to the toilet on the way to doing another activity during a transition, for example, lunchtime, right? So your child might be playing in the sandpit or painting at the easel, and then it's lunchtime, everybody needs to go and wash their hands. So all you do is tie a toilet visit into that. I go to the toilet, I wash my hands, and then I sit down and have lunch. Now, if that happens at home, and it also happens in daycare, then your child is going to be in a natural habit and a routine of doing that, and it becomes their new normal. And it works very well for children who don't initiate toilet visits. Now, somewhere along the line, your child's going to start reading their body signals, and they're going to start self-initiating toilet visits. But if they're not currently doing that, then they need a structure around them so that they feel that they're not just going to be left for hours and hours in either wet pants or having accidents, right? So they really need to have, still the adult initiation of the process if they're not driving it themselves. So really, your early childhood teacher should ideally be taking your child to the toilet about every hour and a half. Now, if you know they have bladder control that's not quite an hour and a half, it might be that it's only an hour, then give your early childhood teacher the heads up and let them know about that, because the level of communication you have with them, it's going to be a lot more effective in putting a plan together where everybody is singing from the same hymn book. Everyone is working on the same plan, and everybody is looking at your child holistically. And at the moment, what they need to be educated on is how to use the toilet. Now remember, some kids are really scared about using the daycare toilets because they're very public. It's very common for the first little while for them to feel a little bit apprehensive about the idea of actually going to the toilet. So one way that you can diffuse some of this tension is, number one, when you arrive at daycare to drop them off, you need to take them to the toilet, because you're the consistency, right? So you take them to the toilet, see if they've got any wheeze waiting to come out, make sure that they feel safe and secure about using the toilet and they feel happy about that place. And then you can obviously say your goodbyes and, pass your child on to the teachers to look after them. And then what you want to do is find out at the end of the day how your child's gone. You don't want your early childhood teacher bounding up to you at the end of the day and saying your child had 5 accidents today. You're already going to know they have accidents because there's going to be a bag. This one here, I've actually bought one of the Wee Pants wet bags, right? There's going to be a bag of wet clothes, right? You're going to know if your child's had accidents. So there's no real benefit to an early childhood teacher communicating in front of your child how many accidents they've had, because it's just reinforcing them doing the wrong thing. What you really want your early childhood teacher to do is actually in front of the child praise through talking about them in front of the child. So they could say something like, oh my gosh, Johnny was so clever today because he actually kept his undies clean and dry 3 times. Or, it could be, he's gone to the toilet and done wheeze on the toilet all day today without my help, or whatever, right? So it's a really good idea to be super specific and ask the teachers, if you do have one of those teachers that just wants to, unload and download everything that's happened, it's better actually that you ask them if they can only share positive things, because if it's something that's been negative, you're actually going to see the consequences of that by heaps and heaps of washing in their little bag, and you're going to already know that. So I find with the little stamp, that's another great way of reinforcing it, because then it's clear to everybody, no matter who's looking after your child, how well they've actually gone that day. And your centre might already have a system where they have, a sticker chart or a stamp chart or an app that they use that you have access to, so that you know how much they've toileted and things like that. So every centre does it a little bit differently, which is why you really want to go in and have a super big chat with them. Now, remember, try not to let your child wear disposables unless it's sleep time. Try and keep them in underwear when they're in the early childhood environment as much as possible, because the consistency is really what's going to make the difference for them. So for more questions that you may have or some more ideas, feel free to jump into our private Facebook group. I'll be in there to answer your questions, to clarify anything that I've talked about through this video. I'm more than happy to help. Can't wait to talk to you soon. Bye.